And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. Once again, the Wyoming media has not reported really on what has been happening in appropriations. You know, of course, the last week and this week, our Appropriations Committee, the Joint Appropriations Committee, has been holding budget hearings. And probably the biggest stories that came out of last week was, first, the governor saying, well, you know, I'm not really in favor of all of the above energy approach anymore. I mean, that one's a big one. But I think that pales in comparison to what we heard from the Wyoming Business Council. That was a huge story. A guy, Josh Durrell, sitting in front of a legislative committee saying that it's his job to design an economic system so that everybody in Wyoming can prosper. Holy crap! First, that's not the job of government. And second, what about the free market? What about capitalism? The system that we allegedly already have. Not a peep from the Wyoming media. Well, there was that one little comment from the Cowboy that legislators were questioning about the free market. But other than that, there was nothing. That hearing went on for over an hour and a half, and for the first 40 minutes of it, legislators peppered him with questions about his beliefs of the free market, which that's the first time I think that I can remember a Wyoming legislative committee actually getting to the root of what somebody believes. You know, what is your approach to government? What is it that you believe? What do you think is the proper role of government, and how does that translate into the hundreds of millions of dollars that we've dumped into your control? That's the first time that's ever happened. And yet there's silence, crickets from the Wyoming media. It just tells you exactly where they're not working in your best interest. They're not even working to report the truth. In fact, they're so far away from what the truth is, it's not even funny. And so there's those stories, but there's a ton of stuff going on in the news, not just in our state, but across the country. Just first, before we get going, a couple of program notes. I just finished an interview with Representative Hageman. It was a fascinating discussion. We talked about the Obamacare subsidies that, and you're going to hear this phrase from me a little bit later on in the program, but all I want for Christmas, my friends, is Republicans that don't cave. That's the only thing that I really want. And so I said that to Harriet, and she kind of told me that there's some other things involved. So it's a fascinating discussion, and I'll bring that to you tomorrow on the podcast. Going forward, I pretty much think it's smooth sailing for the next couple of weeks. Of course, Agent 29 is stuck down in Cheyenne, and so that's what he gets for being on appropriations. And frankly, Not to toot my own producer's horn for him, but he's doing a fantastic job. Well, all of them are doing a fantastic job. It's not just him. So there's a lot to do on the program, and we're going to get to it today. If you haven't signed up for the Outrider, that's the official newsletter of Cowboy State Politics, go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, and fill out the little pop-up. Let me just go there real quick to make sure that it's still working properly as it should be. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. Well, actually, no, there it is. Okay, so there's the pop-up. It says, join the Cowboy State Politics newsletter, the Outrider. So you put your email address in there and hit submit, and it will send me an email, and I'll put you on the list. There's three installments that have gone out already. And the truth is, I really enjoy putting it together because it's another way for you and I to communicate. There's just some people that they're not interested in listening to podcasts or to news for that matter. Over the weekend, I had a meeting yesterday I had a meeting with a friend of mine. He doesn't listen to podcasts either. He's afraid that his head will explode. And, I assured him that if you listen to this program and you don't have to reach for the roll of duct tape, then I'm doing something wrong. So anyway, the newsletter, it's another way for you and me to communicate. I'll give you the top stories of the week, what's happening in the Cowboy State Politics world, and I think it's great. I've received nothing but good feedback about it. So go ahead and sign up for that. Also, the Open Range record is about to be released. Yesterday, I think I finished up the final touches on it. I'm going to do some editing today, and we might be, maybe sometime this week or the first of next week, we might be going live with it. So pretty cool. All sorts of exciting stuff happening on the program, and I'm glad that you can be a part of it. This is certainly an exciting time for me. Anytime I launch a new project, I get super stoked. And so, Also, let's see here. Anything else? Oh, well, there's the studio dog one. Yeah, all right, go. Fascinating thing with those two. They cry to be in the studio, and then when they are in the studio, well, then they want out. It's just the nature of being a canine, I suppose. So, unless you've been living under a stone, you had to have seen all of this Somali fraud stuff that's happening. And the truth is, it is far worse than you could possibly believe. That's one of the things that Harriet mentions during the interview, that it looks like it's about $1 billion, but the truth is it's probably far more than that. From the Daily Wire, the Somali welfare fraud scandal is even worse than you think. And I quote, the Somali-tied welfare fraud scheme in Minnesota is likely far worse than the American people think, involving complicit state government officials and totaling far more stolen money than original estimates stated, according to Homeland Security Advisor Stephen Miller. And I have a piece of Stephen Miller talking about this. Let's go ahead and take a look at it, and then we'll get back. Let's see here. Where is it? Oh, well, if I was in the right folder, that would help. Here we go. Got it. Stephen Miller, here we go.
Based on what we have found so far, we believe that the Somali fraud operation in Minnesota is the single greatest theft of taxpayer dollars through welfare fraud in American history. We believe that we have only scratched the very top of the surface of how deep this goes. And you're familiar with all the scams with pretending that children have autism who are not in fact autistic, with pretending to enroll people in food programs when in fact nobody was ever enrolled, and engaging in massive fraud, lying, and theft and grift on a scale we've never seen before in American history. The total bill, the total tab for this is going to be far beyond the numbers we've already seen reported. We believe the state government is fully complicit in this scheme, and we believe that what we are going to uncover is going to shock the American people. Look, based on the records that we already have, and this is a significant undercount, by the way, 75% of the Somali population in Minnesota is on welfare. But that's likely a significant undercount of just how much of a financial burden the Somali refugee population is imposing on this country.
Okay, so 75% of that entire Somali population is on welfare. An extraordinary amount. I am absolutely blown away. And from from other reports that I've seen, though I don't think that I printed this one out, that of all the people that have been implicated in this entire scheme, it's either like 4 or 7 of them are not Somali. The rest of them, everybody else, is part of the Somali community. From the Daily Wire, Miller noted that some of the reported welfare scams include people pretending that children have autism who are in fact not autistic, pretending to enroll people in food programs when in fact nobody was ever enrolled. There was a report last night on Fox News that said of these food programs, they could only count a small number of people actually receiving any food at all. Based on the records that we already have, by the way, 75% of the Somali population in Minnesota is on welfare. The Trump administration also has said that Democratic leaders in the state were fully complicit in the fraud. And another report I heard over the weekend is that the administrator of Medicaid services, that's Dr. Oz, he said that they're not going to get a dime in Medicaid funding until they figured out, all of this fraud. And so this is a scam of gigantic proportions. And the truth is, a lot of people have become very, very wealthy off of government handouts, and not just Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud, Obamacare subsidies. There are a ton of people that have profited immensely off of the government, and this is just one case. And I'm sure that if you eliminated all of the fraud in our country, you could reduce the deficit by a significant amount. Now, this is what Elon Musk and his Doge committee were identifying, and this is why they took so much heat for it. But when all of the facts come out, it's pretty clear that they were right on the money, that there was no question about fraud and waste and abuse that's happening in our country. And, there are government officials that are just saying they're not going to do anything about it. I mean, that's what the Minnesota governor has been saying, that, no. Tampon Tim, there's no fraud. Don't worry about it here. But there are other folks, like their representation in Congress, the illegal immigrant Ilhan Omar. She attempted to paint the entire community as victims, that we are just victims of all of this, and the poor Somali community. Check this crap out. It's just, I can't believe that people would actually go on video and say these sorts of things. Let's see here. Here we go. Check this out.
The Biden-era Justice Department called it the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country. And this was pocketing COVID-era welfare funds, more than $1 billion in taxpayer money that was stolen. It was pretty shocking. Of the 87 people charged, all but 8 are of Somali descent. And that has added to the spotlight being put specifically on your community. Why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread?
Well, I want to say, this also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. Yeah. We also could have benefited from the program and the money that was stolen. And so it's been really frustrating for people to not acknowledge the fact that we're also, as Minnesotans, as taxpayers, really upset and angry about the fraud that has occurred.
Mm-hmm. So do you think, though, that there was a failure by the Democratic state government to police itself? This is a brazen, fraudulent activity here.
Yeah, and that is what I alluded to in my letter that I had sent to the Secretary of Ag, was to see where things were going wrong.
I can't take it. I can't take it anymore. The reality is she probably knows people that are involved in this, probably all of them. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. And when you're a member of Congress and you know exactly what's happening, and you probably personally know some of the people that are involved in this, and you go on TV with a straight face and you're so concerned, but it's really a problem for us taxpayers, I mean, we're getting screwed too. Yeah, says the person that's profiting from it. I shouldn't say that. I have no evidence whatsoever that Ilhan Omar is profiting off this fraud scheme. But if that many people in the Somali community, 75%, are on welfare, and it's all of the Democrat Party officials that are involved, but not all, most of them are involved in it. You got to think that Ilhan Omar knows some of the people that are involved in this. It's just absolutely amazing. Later on in the interview, Brennan noted, quote, one of the initial defenses by the organization at the heart of this fraud, Feeding Our Future, was to claim that the probe was due to racism. So you have to remember that the woman who led the program is a Caucasian woman. And that was her way of making sure that this would continue to happen by using whatever rhetoric that was available to her, the Congresswoman answered, referring to Feeding Our Future founder Amy Bach. A federal jury in March convicted Bach, along with her alleged chief accomplice, Somali restaurant owner Salim Saeed, on multiple charges in connection with the fraud scheme. Amy Bach and Salim Saeed took advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic to carry out a massive fraud scheme that stole money meant to feed children, according to U.S. Attorney Lisa Kirkpatrick. Omar held her victory party at Saeed's restaurant after initially winning election to Congress in 2018. Bill Glahn, a fellow at the Minnesota-based think tank, told the Daily Mail that Omar was a regular at the now convicted fraudster's Somali restaurant, claiming people Omar personally knew were making tens of millions of dollars in the program. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just conjecturing that Ilhan Omar knew who these people are. It's absolutely the truth. Omar then appeared to place blame on the FBI and the courts in the event the claims Minnesota taxpayer money was being used to fund the Somali terrorist group were true, and were referring to Al-Shabaab. Now, this officials are starting to look into the allegation that the COVID fraud scheme was linked to terrorism, namely the group Al-Shabaab. Now, quote, how confident are you that that's a false claim, Brennan asked Omar. And she replied, I'm pretty confident at the moment because there are people who have been prosecuted who have not been sentenced. Right. So the truth is, if this fraud scheme was as widespread as we believe that it was, and there's all evidence points to it being, fraud on a massive scale. And here is what the FBI said. So if there was a linkage in that money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI and our court system. No, let's see here. Yeah, this is what Omar said. And so do I know that for many years, this sort of like alarm that there is money being transferred through the airport in bags and going to terrorism? That accusation has always existed. Well, millions of dollars of Minnesota taxpayer money were sent to Somalia, with some of the funds from the scheme eventually winding up in Al-Shabaab's possession, according to the City Journal on November 19th. Quote, the largest funder of Al-Shabaab is the Minnesota taxpayer, one of the sources told the outlet. So when you have a fraud scheme this wide, there is a high likelihood that a lot of that money is going towards illicit activities. It almost has to. And I mean, there's no reason to assume that it wouldn't. Of course, you have to be able to prove, any of this, but it certainly looks like it. And it's massive fraud. And the question is, how widespread are these types of schemes? Well, when you look at the entirety of the federal government, and this is one of the things that Harriet alludes to in the interview from this morning, is that when you have these schemes that the federal government is running and there's no oversight on them, there's really no way to ascertain who is involved. I mean, at least from a 30,000 foot view. When you get down to it, it's probably pretty easy. And so anyway, I don't think that we've heard the end of that, and it's just going to keep getting bigger. And the people that it's going to touch, including Ilhan Omar, that list is going to grow significantly. I don't think there's any question about that. Well, have you ever heard the idea that, well, we would never elect a socialist? I know a lot of people that would just, if you walked up to them on the street and said, would Americans elect a socialist, they would probably just laugh at you. They would probably tell you absolutely not, or they'd just say, I'm too busy to talk about this. But we have elected a socialist. Now, I'm not talking about Josh Durrell. He's not elected. He's an appointed official, and he's definitely a socialist. Just listen to what he says. But there are two major cities in America that have elected communists. Zoran Mamdani is not a socialist. He is a full-blown communist. Well, he's got a new video out where he's telling you how to evade ICE. Now, and if you thought that all of his socialistic rhetoric was just a ploy to get elected, man, are you mistaken. But I want to give you an example of where we were versus where we are now. So, for many years, we all thought that this was the kind of government, or at least the kind of government that we would want to elect. Not that it happens every time, but this is where we were.
Somewhere a perversion has taken place. Our natural, unalienable rights are now considered to be a dispensation of government. And freedom has never been so fragile, so close to slipping from our grasp as it is at this moment.
So that's where we were. This is where we are.
Prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
Holy crap, my friends. The government, there's no problem too big for the government to solve and no problem too small for the government to be concerned about. Absolutely incredible. Well, now, our pal up in New York, he is giving some advice on how to evade ICE and how to thwart their efforts. And he's released a video explaining that. Now, he's the mayor of America's largest city, and he knows for a fact that there is a huge number of illegal aliens in his city. And he's releasing a video saying, hey, here's how you get away from them. And I quote from the New York Post. Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani offered advice to illegal immigrants on how to evade ICE in a video message on Sunday, calling on illegal immigrants to, quote, stand up to federal agents and to know your rights. The Democratic Socialist positioned himself as the mayor of more than 3 million immigrants as he spoke following last week's ICE raid in Chinatown, which was disrupted by protesters. Quote, last weekend, ICE attempted to raid Canal Street and detain our immigrant neighbors, Mamdani said in his video. As mayor, I'll protect the rights of every single New Yorker, and that includes the more than 3 million immigrants who call this city home. So, using that logic, if by virtue only of you living there, that means that the city has to protect you. It doesn't really matter if you're violating the law or you're an illegal immigrant or any of that stuff. No, it's the government's job to protect you. ICE cannot, quote, ICE cannot enter into private spaces like your home, school, or private area of your workplace without a judicial warrant. Signed by a judge, Mamdani said, bringing up an example of such a warrant on a screen. You have the right to say, I do not consent to entry. Now, so he's implying that ICE doesn't usually carry warrants, that they don't have the appropriate paperwork, that they're just scooping people off the streets, which is, if you listen to everything that Tom Homan says, and Kristi Noem for that matter, that's just not true. That's a narrative that the media is propagating so that, you'll have people stand up against ICE and not comply with the lawful orders of law enforcement. But here is what Mamdani said in his video. I think it's the whole thing, but we'll go ahead and watch it. Let's see here. Our pal Zoran. Here you go.
Call the city their home. But we can all stand up to ICE if you know your rights. If you encounter ICE, these are the things that every New Yorker should know. First, ICE cannot enter into private spaces like your home, school, or a private area of your workplace without a judicial warrant signed by a judge. That looks like this. If ICE does not have a judicial warrant signed by a judge, you have the right to say, I do not consent to entry, and the right to keep your door closed. Sometimes ICE will show you paperwork that looks like this and tell you that they have the right to arrest you. That is false. ICE is legally allowed to lie to you, but you have the right to remain silent. If If you're being detained, you may always ask, "Am I free to go?" repeatedly until they answer you. You are legally allowed to film ICE as long as you do not interfere with an arrest. It is important to remain calm during any interaction with ICE or law enforcement. Do not impede their investigation, resist arrest, or run. One last thing. New Yorkers have a constitutional right to protest, and when I'm mayor, we will protect that right. New York will always welcome immigrants, and I will fight each and every day to protect, support, and celebrate our immigrant brothers and sisters.
So what do you think's going to happen? What do you suppose is going to be the likely result of that video? Do you think that it's going to result in people following the law? Do you think that it will result in citizens complying with the lawful orders of law enforcement? Well, it couldn't possibly, because the mayor, the head guy, soon to be the head guy in the city, is telling you, well, there are warrants implicitly. And these are all things that there's explicit messaging and there is implicit messaging. Explicit means the things that he's actually saying. And those are that, you have the right to resist a warrant. You have the right to not open your door. This is what a warrant looks like. If they show you this piece of paper, this isn't legally, it's not a legal order at all. Which I should have went back and taken a screenshot of it, but it literally says warrant for removal. And down at the bottom, there's a spot for a judge to sign. And so that's the explicit message. The implicit messaging of that is ICE is roaming around and they don't really have warrants to arrest you. And you don't really have to comply with anything you say because, they're not really law enforcement officers. That's the implicit messaging coming out of that video. Well, what do you think people are more likely to follow? The explicit one or the implicit? Well, one of them, the explicit messaging says, hey, the warrant's got to look like this. It's got to be signed by a judge. And then the very next screen is, they often carry around this. So the likelihood that this video is going to result in people following the law is pretty low. Rather, what is probably going to happen is more riots, more protests against ICE that are based on flawed messaging that's not entirely true. And just think about this. He's going to be the mayor of Wyoming, of America's largest city. And he's already saying implicitly, hey, you don't really have to follow the law. I mean, this is where our country is at, my friends. And thank God it's happening on the other end of the country so that we don't really have to worry about it. I mean, we do have to worry about it, but it's not going to directly affect us until, those illegal immigrants that Zoran Mamdani helped evade capture make their way here. Because, that is what is going to happen, my friends. Every state is a border state. Just go look at Jackson Hole. There are lots of immigrant problems happening there. And other places. Just about all around Wyoming. If you're next to an interstate, it's happening. But we're going to go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about Illinois and J.B. Pritzker. Back in a minute. Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. I'm David Iverson, your illustrious host, Wyoming's conservative voice, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. A record, my friends, that I am immensely proud of. Yes, you're watching Iverson's Institute for Advanced Conservative Study, to steal a line from Rush. And, you know, I have a friend that works for the Blaze, and he says a common phrase around the office is, "Hey, if you stole it, it's been stolen twice." So anyway, and actually, you know, I mean, if you're emulating one of your heroes, I think that that's a good thing. So anyway, my friends, welcome back to the program. It's Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. Well, it is not only New York where elected officials are violating the law. It's happening all over the place. And why wouldn't it? You know, we just went through 4 years of an administration who really didn't prosecute anything, who didn't really care if you were violating the law or not. And so he just let Democrat mayors and governors run wild. And so it makes sense that you're going to see some opposition to cracking down on them now, which is what we should be doing. As I often tell you on the program, we are a nation of laws, not a nation of men. And unfortunately, for the last 4 years, we have had an administration that doesn't believe that believes in cronyism and there is a belief that it really matters what your name is. You know, when I was growing up in Wyoming, a small town Wyoming, there was this belief that it really mattered what your last name was. You know, if you wanted to succeed, well, you know, if your last name was Iverson or your last name was something else, well, that had a great impact on, what you were able to do, where you were able to succeed. See, I've never believed in that sort of thing. I believe that in this country, you have the equal opportunity to succeed just like anybody else does. And some of us have to work harder than others. That's true. Some of us are not as gifted as others. That is also true. But that doesn't mean that you don't have an equal opportunity to succeed. If you work hard and if you are consistent, you will be successful. That's the beautiful thing about capitalism, that everybody has got the same shot at the beginning. Now, whether you have the talent to do it, which I, of course, do, talent on loan from God, but others may not. Well, the previous administration under Joe Biden, they attempted to shift that focus. And I guess the best way to put this is that we became a nation of men, or there was a push to change us into a nation of men, where it mattered a great deal what your last name was. Your success was in no small part dependent upon who you knew. That your back, scratch your back, you scratch mine, and that's what happened in the final days of the Biden administration. They were using that auto pen like it was going out of style, rewarding their political allies, freeing prisoners. All of the warrants, the thousands of warrants that the Biden administration, I would argue that they were unlawfully issued because they used an auto pen. But it was rampant. Corruption was rampant across the country, and it filtered down to the state level and even to the city and county level. I mean, let's be honest. You're more likely to lose your liberty because of your city council than you are what happens at the state legislature or definitely what happens in Congress. But it's always the local level. And that's what we're seeing. So before the break, we talked about the fraud, the Somali fraud in Minnesota. Well, that reached all the way down to local officials. They were probably tied up in it. And then the governor Tampon Tim Walz had to be complicit with it. He had to be. There's no way that you can pay out $1 billion and have no oversight whatsoever and you not be at least okay with it. Yeah, do whatever you want. It's okay. We won't pay any attention to you. Well, the same thing holds true in Illinois. And this piece is from Breitbart. J.B. Pritzker's sanctuary policy frees nearly 1,800 illegal aliens charged with murder, assault, sex crimes back into Illinois neighborhoods. Now, when you're not in bizarro world, which a lot of times that's what I feel like. I feel like what is right or what is up, right side up is turned upside down, inside out, and top down, bottom up, and all of that stuff. I mean, it really does feel like you're in an episode of The Twilight Zone. So from Breitbart, quote, the sanctuary state of Illinois has released almost 1,800 illegal aliens charged with crimes such as murder, assault, burglary, robbery, and sex crimes back into communities since President Donald Trump took office in late January, new data reveals. So this was not happening during the Biden administration. This happened after Donald Trump took office because, like I said, in the waning days of the Biden administration, there was a lot of activity. And so, I don't know that this is a result of that, but it is a result of the Biden administration. What I'm saying is when you have 4 years where you're not really following the law, you're not prosecuting criminals, that attitude, that belief system, that filters down to lower levels. And so I think it's kind of unrelated that this happened right after Trump took office. It was probably in the pipeline way before then. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Acting Director Todd Lyons released the data on Monday while urging Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul to honor more than 4,000 active ICE detainers that the agency has lodged against criminal illegal aliens in the sanctuary state. In particular, Lyons said Illinois officials have already failed to honor 1,768 ICE detainers and release the illegal aliens back into neighborhoods. Among those illegal aliens released into communities are 5 charged with murder, 141 charged with assault, 23 charged with burglary, 10 charged with sex crimes, 4 charged with robbery, 24 charged with drug crimes, and 15 charged with weapons offenses. And by the way, if you're an illegal alien and not a citizen, or if you're an immigrant and not a citizen, you can't legally possess a firearm here. Only citizens get to do that. Quote, Governor Pritzker and his fellow Illinois sanctuary politicians are releasing murderers, pedophiles, and kidnappers back into our neighborhoods and putting American lives at risk, the Department of Homeland Security's Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement. We're calling on Governor Pritzker and his administration to stop this dangerous derangement and commit to honoring the ICE arrest detainers of more than 4,000 criminal illegal aliens in Illinois' custody. It's common sense. Criminal illegal aliens should not be released back onto our streets to terrorize more innocent Americans. So we're not talking about people that, they were picked up for jaywalking, that they were stopped for a traffic stop and it was discovered that they were in the country illegally. We're not talking about those folks. Rather, people who are being charged with serious crimes, murder, assault, rape, those sorts of things. Those are not the type of people that you and I would say, well, it was a jaywalking offense. That's, really don't prosecute that. We're not talking about those types of crimes. They're serious crimes. Rape, assault, and in some cases, murder. ICE officials said Illinois has released from custody and failed to honor detainers for illegal aliens such as 49-year-old Victor Manuel Mendoza Garcia. How many names do you need? Of Mexico, who is convicted of kidnapping for ransom and sentenced to 18 years in prison. Yeah, they released him. Don't worry about that. It's not that big a deal. It really is kind of like jaywalking. A news release from ICE detailed other instances where illegal aliens were released from custody instead of being turned over to agents. Juan Morales Martinez, an illegal alien from Guatemala, was arrested after a vehicle crash near Westfield, Illinois, where he was a passenger. Early reports of the vehicle crash show 2 fatalities, a county board member and his wife. So smashed into him. Police also found an extended magazine and ammunition in the vehicle. Now, in Wyoming, that wouldn't necessarily be a crime unless you're an illegal alien. On October 25th, ICE lodged a detainer on Morales Martinez. On October 27th, ICE arrested Morales after his release from the Clark County Jail. The jail did not cooperate with ICE, but ICE officers suspected his release and performed an enforcement action outside of the jail. He has now been removed from the United States. Here's another one. Amilcar Waldo Gonzalez Jimenez, an illegal alien from Mexico, was arrested and convicted of 1 count of driving under the influence and domestic battery and 2 counts of criminal sexual assault, rape. ICE's detainer for Gonzalez Jimenez was not honored. On November 13th, ICE arrested Gonzalez Jimenez. Juan Alberto Caro Marin was an illegal alien from Mexico. He was arrested and convicted of aggravated criminal sexual abuse of a family member and sentenced to 6 years in Illinois Department of Corrections. 6 years. So we're not talking about, a DUI where you spend a couple days in jail and you're out. No, this is years in prison. Let's see here. ICE detainer for Caro Marin was not honored. On November 9th, he was arrested, where he's currently in ICE custody. Jose Manuel Fuentes Vargas. Why do they have so many names? An illegal alien from Mexico was arrested for domestic battery, violation of a protection order, convicted sexual assault of a victim less than 30, so he's a pedophile. ICE's detainer for Fuentes Vargas was not honored. On October 30th, he was arrested and he's currently in custody. Leonardo Ignoosto, an illegal alien from Mexico, has illegally entered the U.S. at least 4 times. Igno has a lengthy criminal history dating back to December 27th of 2010. That was a conviction of theft in Cook County. Most recently was September 18th of this year. He convicted Cook County convicted him of child abduction, luring a child, victim for a child less than 17 years of age, and sentenced him to 1 year. Why you only get 1 year for all of those things is beyond me. Despite an immigration detainer lodged on September 23rd, he was released. ICE was able to locate and apprehend him on November 19th, and he was removed. So the list goes on, and I've got, let's see here, 2 more pages full of these. But the point is that we have violent criminals in our country, and there are some states who are unwilling to do anything about it. That, you're an illegal alien, sorry, you get to run wild. Now, if it were you or I that committed one of those things, they'd throw the book at us, and rightfully so. I mean, there's no reason to say that if you commit those crimes, you should be out walking around the free. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But I think it's very clear that our entire justice system was weaponized for politics. And I use the word weaponized a little bit differently than what you're familiar with. What I mean is that we've been using the justice system as a political weapon. That we have Republicans, namely the president, who is very much intent on law and order. And because Democrats want to resist anything with the name Trump in its orbit, it doesn't matter if you're a convicted criminal or if you're a jaywalker. You're going to get released because it is for a political purpose. Democrats do this because they have a fundamentally different worldview than you or I do. Democrats believe that the ends justify the means, that whatever your goal is, getting rid of Donald Trump or getting Democrats in office or whatever, what have you. Anything you do to accomplish that goal is entirely justified. Often we conservatives sit around and say, well, God, man, how do these people lie like that? I mean, how do they look themselves in the mirror? Well, it's because they have a different worldview that they actually celebrate lying. They celebrate getting one over on you. You see, Republicans, we don't look at things that way. We're not the type of people that think that cheating is winning. Like we'd never move the goalposts to win a game. If you have to cheat to win, it means that you didn't win. We believe that that how we get to a problem, how we get to a solution, is at least as important as how we get there. What I mean by the end solution is at least as important. I mean, both of them are important. God, I'm like getting all tied up here. We don't believe that the ends justify the means. We believe that how you get there is important too. So you have two completely different worldviews. One of them is Democrats, and the other one is we Republicans, and we happen to believe in law and order, and that you should be punished for the wrong things that you do. Democrats, they don't believe that. So, I mean, it's happening all over the country, California, Illinois, you name it. It's all, oh, well, here we go. So we've got about 15 minutes before the break, and we all kind of knew that this was coming. And quite frankly, I think it's a Christmas present, I have to tell you. But Yasmin Crockett has decided that she is going to run for the U.S. Senate. She's going to get clobbered. There's no way that she's going to win that. She's a one-term congressman. And, while she may be popular in her district, she's not popular, throughout the state. And running a statewide election is very, very different than running in your own district. So take Agent 29's district. So his is, comparatively speaking, it's actually a little bit larger than some others, but it's essentially downtown Sheridan. And then there's this big piece that runs, skirts out towards 5th Street and runs up to around where I live. So it's relatively big, but there's a big difference campaigning there. I mean, there's not that many neighborhoods. There's only one town that you have to go to. Statewide election, that's a totally different critter there because you've got to win the majority of the state. And Wyoming's a big state. Running, while there's only 580,000 people here, half of whom are able to vote, and half of those are actually registered to vote. So you're looking at, roughly, I don't know, 150, 175,000, maybe 200,000 people that that you're working with. That's not the case in other states. So Texas is a lot bigger than Wyoming. So winning a statewide race in Texas, and when you are Yasmin Crockett, that's a whole different critter there. This is from Breitbart. Yasmin Crockett has filed paperwork to enter the Democrat primary for the U.S. Senate hours after former Representative Colin Allred dropped out of the race, just ahead of the state's 6 p.m. Monday deadline for candidates to officially enter the paperwork ahead of the March 3rd primary. A source told the constantly broadcasting Socialism News Network of Texas that Crockett has completed her filing and is set to announce her campaign later in the day. Instead of running for the Senate seat currently occupied by John Cornyn, Allred declared that he will be running for the seat in Texas's new 33rd congressional district. Crockett stated last week that she was closer to yes than I am no on running for Cornyn's seat, arguing that the coalition of black and brown voters would help her win. Well, certainly that would help, but it's a state that's in a state that's as big as Texas. We're not talking about just winning one county. We're not even talking about winning like a Senate district. Senate district is a way bigger race, even in Wyoming, state Senate. But a U.S. Senate race where you have to campaign for the entire state, that's huge. I mean, Texas is a really, really big place. With Crockett running for the Senate, the 30th congressional district she has represented since 2023 will be up for grabs. So she still is a one-term congresswoman. A source familiar with the situation told the constantly broadcasting Socialist channel last week that Representative Mark Veazey will run in the newly redrawn district. Yasmin Crockett's shenanigans are an embarrassment to Texas. Everything's bigger here, except her ability to win this race, Republican National Committee spokesperson Delaney Bomar said in a statement. So here is Crockett's campaign announcement. This is absolutely incredible. Just watch this. I mean, why wouldn't you vote for this person?
Texas turns blue. It won't be because of any one candidate, but because of each and every one of you doing your part.
Yes,
Turning Texas blue is what I want to talk to y'all about today. Now, there are
definitely
those
not
say,
reading
ain't no
off
way
of the
we done tried
teleprompter.
it 50 kinds of ways. Let me be clear, y'all ain't never tried it the JC way.
Yeah, y'all never tried it that way.
We used to telling us what I can't do.
Yeah.
But they have no idea what Crockett's crew will do.
Yeah.
And so I just want to be clear for all the haters in the back.
All the haters in the back.
Listen up real loud. We gonna get this thing done.
Yes, we are. Watch your hand. This is funny.
So they tell us that Texas is red. They are lying.
Oh, yeah, they're lying. Texas is not red. There's no way that you would think that Texas would be a Republican state. That is just not possible. In fact, it's just blue, my friends. Wow. Well, let me tell you why this is such a Christmas present. So, just by virtue of her signing up to run for the Senate, she can't run for the House. So we don't have to deal with her in the House of Representatives, and she's not going to win the Senate seat. So we don't have to deal with her in the Senate. So why then even try this? Well, a lot of people campaign for races that they don't have a possibility of winning to cash in. You get people to donate to you, and you build up a war chest, and then you just illegally use that money for your own purposes. And that's what a lot of these Democrats do. And that's probably what the case is with Yasmin Crockett. There was a report, I think it was maybe last night, where she's upside down in her condo, that there's a lien against it. So she's got to make some cash. And what's the easiest way for a really crappy politician to raise cash? Well, run for an office that you're not going to win, that you have no chance of winning. So, that's really what it is. But, broadly speaking, this is a Christmas present for all of us. We don't have to worry about worry is the wrong word. We don't have to deal with Yasmin Crockett anymore. She's not going to win. She's not going to be in Congress. So it is a win-win. Sorry about those people in Texas. You do have to put up with Yasmin Crockett. But up here in Wyoming, we don't have to even worry about it. Well, we're a little bit early for our break, but this piece that I want to cover, it's going to take us longer than the few minutes we've got left before the top of the hour break. So let's go ahead and take that. And when we come back, I'll tell you what I really want for Christmas. Do that in a minute. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. Make sure that you don't miss a minute of the program. This show is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Don't forget about the podcast. That's every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And I got to tell you, my friends, there have been a couple of rockin' episodes, and ones that I'm super proud of. One of which was about Josh Durrell. And this one, I know we've been hammering on him for a while, but I think it is so important. So I'd like to play you, and I know I've played these sound bites before, but there's more added to them. What he said in the Appropriations Committee. So let me just play you a piece of, I think it was Saturday's episode, and it was entitled Wyoming-Style Command and Control. Wyoming-Style Central Planning is what it was called. So take a listen to this. But barring all of those circumstances, businesses ought to be able to freely operate and conduct their affairs as they see fit without undue influence from government. But Josh Durrell evidently doesn't believe in that. Here he is saying it again.
The free market as an ideal, unfortunately, it doesn't exist except at, maybe those ivory tower type institutions that we might call as in academia. And that's where it exists because it's a model.
All right, you've got that part. But Josh Durrell goes farther than that. He claims that we ought to create an economic system. A system, no doubt, that involves him interfering wherever he chooses. It's his job, even, to create one. Here he is saying it.
I believe it's our job to give opportunities to those people that want to stay in Wyoming, but don't see a future. Now, I don't believe it's our job to give them that. Let me restate that. I believe it's our job to develop a system, an economic system, that will allow for those people to reach their potential here.
That's called a command and control economy. That we're going to create an economic system, regardless of the one that already exists, and that the enlightened business types will be the ones that control it. This is absolutely shocking. It should blow your mind that a Wyoming government official is saying this in a legislative meeting, or that he thinks he actually has the power to do that, or that that's even possible. But that's neither here nor there. That he's going to create an economic system and that he and his enlightened pals are going to be the ones that control it. Thursday's meeting was so important, my friends, that we actually got a Wyoming government official and drilled them on what their worldview is, what their view of the government's role in our world ought to be. The decisions that Josh Durrell and the agency that he heads have made make so much more sense now. That not only do they have the knowledge and the foresight to make all of these economic decisions, but that they have a right and that they ought to be making those decisions. That they should absolutely be picking winners and losers. That no matter what it does to other businesses, the decisions that they make are in furtherance of creating an economic system that they believe is going to benefit the entire state. Now, did you think that we had this type of an ideologue in a high-ranking government position in Wyoming? After hearing what he truly believes, it makes a heck of a lot more sense now, doesn't it? Okay, one more piece before I let you go for this morning. Well, we've gone down the road this far,
Let's go ahead and let it
so
play.
we may as well put the capstone on it. Thomas Sowell, who, at least in my opinion, is one of the most important economists in the 20th and 21st century, has a very interesting view of the kind of central planning that Josh Durrell is advocating for. Here's what he said.
All sorts of countries have tried central planning. Now, the guys who run the central planning, they usually have advanced degrees from prestigious institutions. They have mountains of statistics sitting there, and they have all the experts in the country at their beck and call. And yet when you take the power out of their hands and return it to the market, then all the hundreds of millions of people who don't have any of those things usually end up with a higher rate of growth and a more rapid decline in poverty.
None of this is rocket surgery. You get government out of the way, you let the market work on its own, and people prosper. See, that's the most incredible part about this whole thing. When you get government like out of the business of business and just let the free market operate, generally the market expands. There are more people that are more successful. There are more people that are able to succeed. But you're dealing with two different competing worldviews. One of them is that government doesn't have any place in business. And we got to stay the heck out of it. That government's job is to just create a favorable tax environment and keep regulations as low as possible and just let the free market work. Now, the other worldview is that of Josh Terrell, and he says we have to we think it's our job to create an economic system. Oh my God. What about the economic system that we've been working in since forever? Capitalism. What about that one? You see, these folks, the ideologues that are in charge, definitely at the Wyoming Business Council, but elsewhere, they don't see the world like that. They don't see that capitalism has been in any way successful. They don't believe that that the government ought to stay out of it. In fact, in the podcast, there are several examples of things that there are several sound bites from Josh Terrell saying, well, no, we have to intervene in the economy. The free market is working against us. That's what he's told me during the interview on the show. And because the free market is working against us, well, then we have to intervene. That's the only way that you can be successful. That's the only way that you can have a successful business in this country. That's a very different thing than what the rest of us Republican, conservative, capitalists believe. So anyway, go listen to the podcast. It was, I think that I did a tremendous job on it, and it's chock full of sound bites from Josh Terrell and from the appropriations meeting. And, last week I was talking to one of our state senators yesterday, and I just made the comment, I'm like, man, last week was like Agent 29 week on the program. It seemed like every episode I did, there was some fantastic thing that Ken had said or asked. He's doing a really great job. I wish that he was back producing the program, but that's my own enlightened self-interest there. But doing a fantastic job and exposing these people in our state government who really do look at the world differently than you do. It's not just that they have different ideas about how to run our government or how to run our country. Well, they do have different ideas, but they have an entirely different way of viewing it. And most of that comes from just the nature of Wyoming's political system, that it is very difficult to get elected as a Democrat in this state. Now, years ago, that wasn't the case. We had, lots of governors. We still have governors that are Democrats. But gone are those days where you can put a D at the end of your name and be successful politically. And so what a lot of opportunistic politicians did is they changed their registration to Republican. They inserted a few key words to convince unwitting conservatives to vote for them. And then they just ran for office. And that's why you have things like the Wyoming Business Council, which, by the way, we have two agencies that pretty much do the exact same thing. One of them is the Wyoming Grants Office. The other one is the Wyoming Business Council. So not only is the Wyoming Business Council duplicative, it's also a tremendous waste of money. We pay Josh Terrell $24,000 every single month, $288,000 a year. Oh my God. And, they have at least 37 employees. And the reason I say at least is the Wyoming Business Council is not required to tell the legislature how many employees they have. In fact, there's a lot of reports that they're not required to give to the legislature. They are basically a quasi-governmental agency. So kind of government, kind of not, but it was intentionally set up that way so that those people that run the business council can operate almost unimpeded, that they can, give money out to business A or B or C, and they don't have to be held accountable for it. Because, that is how it was designed, to shell out your money to different business, to pick winners and losers. And that's because the folks that got elected, these Democrats who changed their title or the letter at the end of their name to an R instead of a D, that's how they designed it, so that they could get their agenda pushed through of central planning and you would be none the wiser. And give it a fancy name, the Business Council. Well, first of all, government shouldn't have anything to do with business, and second, when they do get involved, they muck everything up, which is exactly what's happened. So I encourage you to go back and listen to that episode from Saturday. It's called the Wyoming Style Central Planning, and there's also a soundbite in there. From another economist that, it's Thomas Sowell, and Thomas Sowell is one of my favorites. He's still alive. He's 95 years old, which is one of the reasons you don't see him on, giving interviews nearly as much as he used to. But anyway, it's a great episode. Go check it out. My friends, all I want for Christmas, the only thing I want for Christmas, and to me, this seems like a pretty small ask, is Republicans with a backbone. I just want Republicans to stand up and do what it is that they told us they were going to do. We had a 40-some day government shutdown over these government Obamacare subsidies, and now there are plans to go back on them. Yeah, we'll just extend them a little bit. But this issue, and I talked about this with Harriet this morning, and again, I'll publish that episode, that interview tomorrow on the podcast, and then we'll play it on tomorrow's program as well. But the reality is there are a lot of people that are going to get hurt without these subsidies. But my position, and it's, you could call me a cold-hearted capitalist if you want, but I want to get government back in the box. And somehow, sometimes the only way to do that is to just, just cut the cord, jump off the bridge, and just do it. And when you do that some people are going to end up being hurt, and there are a ton of people that are taking advantage of these subsidies, and there's fraud wrapped up in this as well. That's one of the things that Harriet mentions, that it's not just subsidies for Obamacare. There's a ton of fraud in there. So there are definitely reasons to get rid of this, but there are also reasons to keep it. Harriet, one example she brings up during the interview is that there are some people in Wyoming that received insurance bills of $5,000 a month. That is completely untenable. There's no way that you could pull that off. There's no way that I could pull that off anyway. But there again, I'm one of those evil capitalists that I think that we just get the government out of it and just pull the rug out from underneath it, and let's just be done with it. But from the Federalist, today, in Republicans being useless, House GOPers surrender on Obamacare fight. And I quote, after successfully holding strong in the face of the Democrat-led government shutdown over Obamacare, a cabal of House Republicans is now waving the white flag on the issue. On Thursday, nearly 36 Democrats and Republicans introduced a proposal to extend taxpayer-funded Obamacare subsidies. As Federalist senior contributor Christopher Jacobs said, and he has regularly reported to the Federalist, these Biden-era subsidies, which are set to expire at the end of the year, have been a complete and total disaster. Spearheaded by Representative Josh Gottheimer and Jen Kiggins, the measure would extend and reduce the tax credits in a two-step process, requiring two separate votes by Congress. According to the New York Times, while the first vote would extend the tax credits for a year with some modifications, including the addition of a new income limit. The second vote would implement what the group described as more significant reforms, including potentially eliminating $0 premiums, with exceptions for need-based support. During the press conference introducing the proposal, Democrat-turned-Republican Jeff Van Drew laid out his best case for forcing taxpayers to keep bankrolling a broken system. And this is the logical fallacy that a lot of our lawmakers are operating on. That we're too invested in the program, that we spent all of this money, and therefore we can't disregard it. Well, if government is the problem, the solution to solving the problem is not more government. If you're paying into something, it's like digging a hole. If you're digging yourself a hole and you realize that, wow, it's getting too deep and I can't get out of it, the right response is to stop digging. Put down the shovel. But instead, what Jeff Van Drew, and wait until you see this guy. If this were not the stereotypic picture of a Democrat returned to Republican, I don't know what is. But his solution, no, just keep digging. Keep digging. That's the solution. Put your head down, nose to the grindstone, and just keep throwing money at it. Well, I think that's ridiculous, and you will too. Check this out. Let's see here. Where Republicans caving. Here you go.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be with you. I want to thank Josh and Jen as well. We all worked on it, but they did the lion's share of work, and it's not easy dealing with a bunch of Republicans and Democrats together, so I appreciate them. It isn't. Let's face it. It's the truth. I'm a very blunt person, so some of you are probably surprised to see me here. I am conservative. I am a Republican. I have certain values and beliefs, but I have to tell you what I believe in as well.
Stop, stop, stop. I am sick of that. I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, but and I've got values. Apparently one of those is selling us down the river. This is what redcoats do all of the time. And I'm not saying this Jeff Van Drew guy is a redcoat, but he's certainly acting like one. I'm a conservative and I'm a Republican, but I think we should continue funding subsidies. Yeah! It's just, my friends, it is just absolutely infuriating. Okay, so you were a Democrat, and you didn't like what the Democrat Party was doing, so you switched over to the Republican Party, and now you're acting like a Democrat again. You're wearing a red tie, though. I mean, I guess that makes a difference. But no, just be honest. Say, I'm a member of the Republican Party, but, I've got some feelings about this Obamacare stuff, and, this is my proposal. Don't tell me that you're a conservative. It's Republicans like this that screw up the definition of the word conservative. All right, fine. You're a liberal Republican. Just be honest about it. This is the very problem that we're dealing with in Wyoming. A bunch of people like Poison Barry Crago and Eric Barlow, who have a voting record of 80% of the time with the Democrats, sending out mailers that hit every mailbox that say, I'm a conservative. When the truth is, they're the farthest thing from it. You're not a conservative if you vote with the Democrats. You're not a conservative if you vote with Obamacare. I mean, I understand. It's not an easy situation. I get it. And I'm going to tell you, I kind of agree with Representative Hageman that there are people that are going to get hurt in this whole thing. So maybe the best thing to do is to create a soft landing. But let's just put it in the bill, shall we? Let's not leave it open-ended. All right, so if you can persuade people that, all right, we need a year longer with these subsidies, we're going to reduce them, we're going to increase the requirements of them, whatever you're going to do. But don't tell me that you're a conservative, because you're clearly not. Let's continue with Jeff Van Drew.
Good morning, everybody. It's good to be with you.
Let me fast forward. Maybe I can fast forward. Maybe I just screwed it up.
And we don't want them to suffer. And we have a responsibility. The American people that live in our respective districts, they didn't create this problem. In all honesty, politicians created this problem. Now, I'm going to be blunt again. I do not like the Affordable Care Act. I don't. And it's fraught with all kinds of problems. There's a lot of corruption, and I think you're going to hear more about that in the upcoming hearings, including the committee that I chair. But that's not the point today, and that's not the discussion for today. So there's a couple takeaways in my mind out of this. Yes, we do have to change the ACA and the ACA tax credits. Insurance and the cost of it, it's been a great boon for insurance companies, and it's helped certain agents, some of whom are not even legal and appropriate, and certain brokers. It hasn't been good. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a responsibility. And right now, in the short term, people deserve to have their insurance. They must keep some form of insurance that is about equal to what they have, so that they can continue to work, continue to raise their families, continue to live. This is a really important thing. So I believe that we have two responsibilities. One, to have a bridge for the American people. This bridge would allow them to keep their health insurance. I think the second responsibility we have is to do much, much better with health care. So what this enables, this is a good bill. And this is a good bill, and there are other good bills. And what these bills enable us to do is to work on, I hope to God we really do it. Quite frankly, I wish we didn't have, 43 days off. We could have worked on health care that entire time.
All right,
but here we are.
I've had enough of this. So the real problem is that the Republicans haven't had any cohesive plan with Obamacare. How many years ago, how many times over the years have we heard the phrase repeal and replace? We're going to repeal Obamacare over and over and over and over. But do they ever do it? No. Now we did get rid of the mandate. That was a good thing. But the bulk of that bill is still in effect. And we continue to attack problems piecemeal. We just kind of nibble around the edges and we don't get at the heart of the matter. Well, that's never going to solve the problem. I just wish, I want one of these Republicans to come up with a solid plan to say, we are doing away with Obamacare. Here's how we're going to fix all of these programs. Now, I do find the whole soft landing argument a little bit persuasive in that people are going to get hurt. It's true. I mean, there are going to be people, if you do away with these subsidies, right now, there are people that are going to get hurt. That much is true. But let's not make it open-ended. It's not a conservative argument. Now, there again, right? I am persuaded by the argument that, look, once the federal government starts giving subsidies, one, there's usually no end to them. But two, you get people reliant on them. Now, how long ago was COVID? 4 years, 5 years ago? I mean, it's over. It's been over for a really long time, and we're still continuing these subsidies. Now, let's not forget, it was the Democrats who first put this deadline in there. That was their argument. Now, they never thought that Republicans would be in control or be in a position to completely do away with them. So that was their gamble. Their game plan was probably, we'll put this sunset date in there. And then when it comes close, we'll just extend them. And we'll use all of these arguments that you're hearing right now, that people are going to get hurt. They're going to receive $5,000 insurance bills, which, again, is just wrong. But, the solution to being in a hole is to stop digging. The solution to being fat is to put down the spoon. That's as brutal as that is. That's the answer. And if we are going to continue to nibble around the edges, we're never going to solve this problem. So what needs to happen is a cohesive strategy to get rid of this boondoggle called Obamacare. Maybe you can fix the problem for some of these folks on the outer extremities that are going to, get the $5,000 insurance bill. And that's not right. That's a problem that government created. And I do think that it's a problem that government has to solve. But it has to be part of a larger strategy, a larger plan to deal with it. Stop nibbling around the edges, grow a backbone, and let's just do it. You had a 40 some odd day government shutdown over this thing. So let's not throw it all away. The conservative solution is to deal with the problem, to get government out of the business of healthcare, which is a big problem because we got Medicare, we got Medicaid, we got states doing Medicaid expansion. This is a really big problem. And just talk to Agent 29, who he's made it one of his missions to, rein in fraud and abuse and to drastically reduce the Department of Health. That is a huge job. Economies of scale compared to the Wyoming Business Council, which, that one needs to be defunded absolutely anyway. But anyway, just if I could have one Christmas wish, let's just solve this entire thing. Just be done with it, my friends. Now, there is a lot of, and you remember after Charlie Kirk got killed, we heard cries all over the place. Well, we've got to turn down the volume. We've got to get a handle on our political rhetoric. Let's stop all of this. Not everybody is Hitler. Not everybody's a Nazi. That only lasted a couple of weeks, and then we were back to calling people Hitler and Nazis, and a lot of other stuff. So a Democratic congressman has suggested that Donald Trump is going to murder Americans like narco-terrorists. Now, first, there was a video that came out. I don't know if I got this video or not. Let me look. there was a video that came out, and it was Joe Biden saying that we have to go after all of these narco terrorists, and I mean essentially arguing for the exact same thing that Trump is doing. Oh, here it is. He's talking about the drug war. I didn't know that I downloaded the video, but I did. So let's take a look at this. So here's Joe Biden, the guy who would become the worst president in American history, and here's what he's saying.
We speak with great concern about the drug problem in America today, but we fail to appreciate or address it for what it really is, the number one threat to our national security. It affects the readiness of our Army, the productivity of our workers, and the achievement of our students, and the very health and safety of our families. America is under attack, literally, under attack by an enemy who is well-financed, well-supplied, and well-armed, and fully capable of declaring total war against the nation and its people, as we've seen in Colombia. Here in America, the enemy is already ashore, and for the first time, we are fighting and losing a war on our own soil. Every president for the past 2 decades, Democrat and Republican alike, has declared war on drugs, and each of them has lost that war and lost it miserably. They lost because they attempted to deal with only part of the drug problem. They lost because their initiatives were pulled apart by bureaucratic squabbling among...
You get the point. So and it's interesting too that he is speaking from the Oval Office. Now that video, first it was George H.W. Bush talking first from the Oval Office, and then it switched to Joe Biden. So though I don't know, I didn't look into it enough to find out. My guess is it was this bipartisan deal. Hey, let's talk about the drug war. You can talk from the Resolute desk. I really wish he hadn't done that. But anyway, so there you have Joe Biden saying, hey, we got this drug war problem. And, I am totally in favor of killing off these narcotics dealers. And, if you're in international waters and you're not flying a country flag and you're bringing drugs into the United States, fentanyl, I see no reason why we shouldn't just blow up some more boats. But the Democrats, of course, they're, instead of focusing on what the real problem is, which is the rampant fentanyl and other narcotics in our country, they're using it as a political cudgel against Donald Trump. And let's see, who is this guy? Democrat Senator Seth Moulton suggested Sunday that the Trump administration might soon begin murdering Americans. Here he is saying it. And again, I thought we were supposed to turn down the volume, that we were supposed to stop with all this crazy violent rhetoric. No, not according to the Democrats. Check it out.
Look, the President of the United States and his Secretary of Defense are conducting murder on the high seas.
Yes,
they're committing murder, and
seas.
Americans should care. Look, none of us like drug traffickers, but we have laws that say that drug traffickers don't get summarily executed. And if it's happening off the coast of America with people that we don't know, just give it time before Donald Trump starts doing this same kind of thing to people we do know right here at home. It matters if the President of the United States breaks the law.
Yeah, so that's the Democrat narrative, that the president and Pete Hegseth, they're committing murder on the high seas. These folks are no different than the Barbary pirates. Oh, no, there's reaching back in history. It was Thomas Jefferson that went to war with pirates who were assaulting, detaining, and pillaging American ships. And they didn't really have any allegiance to any country. But they were, by the way, Barbary Coast. They were Muslims, by the way. So anyway, we declared war on the Barbary pirates. And, this is no different. Why is it that these drug runners are any different than, why are they not committing piracy? I would love to hear an argument as to why that's not the case. Why is it that we are not committing piracy on the high seas? Or not we, but they. How is that not them acting as pirates? I'll wait. Oh, wait, it's not. No, it's exactly the same thing. And so there's no reason why we shouldn't be blowing these things out of the water. Now, the Democrats have ramped up criticisms of the Trump administration's war on drugs after a report from the Washington Post last month claimed that War Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a kill-them-all order carried out against survivors of a destroyed drug-running vessel. Top military officials have contested the reports. Admiral Mitch Bradley said in a closed-door hearing in Congress last week that Hegseth never gave such an order. In one September incident that has become the basis for the Democratic claims of war crimes, Bradley made the call to send a follow-up strike against a vessel that he deemed was still a threat. So he's a military officer, and the order said, hit that boat. And it came out over the weekend that there have been JAG officers present at all of these. Every single time this has happened, they've had a lawyer, a military lawyer, standing right there saying, yep, we're good to go here. And so the admiral's job is to respond to a threat. That's it. If the threat still exists, well, send another missile, or send another. Hit them with the big guns or whatever. Now, Democrats have pushed to have the classified video of the follow-up strike made public. Senator Tom Cotton, who has seen the video, appeared on the NBC News, the never-ending broadcast of communism news program on Sunday, said that he had no problem with releasing it as long as doing so doesn't risk national security. Quote, I'll say that the Department of War may have valid concerns about revealing what we know about tactics and techniques with these cartels are using or about other sources or methods, said Cotton. I would trust Secretary Hegseth and his team to make the decision about whether they can declassify and release the video. But again, there's nothing remarkable on that video in his opinion. And so, in other words, and of course, I haven't seen the classified version, but just the ones that are available publicly, it's very clearly a drug running boat. There's no flag, there's no nothing, and you can see a couple of people in the boat, and it's loaded with narcotics. And so with the technology we have, satellites, what have you, it's pretty easy to tell. You got these big giant bales. They're all wrapped in plastic. Gee, I wonder what they are. And so I see no reason why they're any different than the Barbary Pirates, which, of course, they're not. Now, the Democrats, and I played you the Joe Biden video, they once called out links between drug trafficking and terrorism. That video I played you was from 1989. And he said Americans are under attack. But Obama and the Democrats also have links. By the time Biden became the vice president, the Democrat administration of President Barack Obama developed a strategy, quoting now, strategy to combat transnational organized crime, which warned that terrorist groups and insurgent groups were increasingly turning into criminal networks for funding and logistics. In the fiscal year of 2010, 29 of the 63 top drug trafficking organizations identified by the Department of Justice had links to terrorist organizations, according to the White House. Well, what do we do with terrorist organizations? We kill them. Pretty easy, right? Democrats have warned about the nexus between drug traffickers and terrorism. As recently as December 2020. During President Trump's first term, the House Democrat-led Western Hemisphere Drug Policy Commission identified the links between international terrorist groups and Latin American criminal organizations. Now, Trump's plans are being used as a cudgel against him for combating the very same problem. The same problem that Obama dealt with, the same problem that George W. Bush dealt with, the same problem that Bill Clinton dealt with. All of them. And it is, the Democrats, they don't really have any concern about time. No, they don't care about history. They don't care about what they said in the past. It is all a matter of what is politically expedient today, my friends. And that's really all they care about. Whatever it takes to accomplish their political goals at the moment. And, that's what Democrats do. That's what they always do. Back in a minute. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it. But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding faster than I ever thought that it would. There's a bunch of stuff that's happening on the show that I am really, really excited about, my friends. There's the newsletter. Make sure, if you haven't signed up for that yet, go to cowboystatepolitics.com and fill out the pop-up and shoot me an email. Put your email address in there, hit submit, and then I'll put you on the list. It's the next one is going to come out Thursday morning, and it's just another way for you and me to communicate. So that, and I don't want you to miss anything that's coming up. I mean, we have a legislative session that's going to happen in a couple of months, and it's going to be extraordinarily important that you know what's happening. What are they doing? By they, of course, I mean the Redcoats and the Democrats, because we got an election that's going to happen right after that, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that, a lot of lies that are going to be thrown your way about, a whole bunch of stuff. People telling you that they're conservative when they're really not. The Freedom Caucus is bad. Okay, so what exactly have they done that's so bad? Explain that to me. Yep, let's deal in facts. Let's not deal in your opinions. So anyway, super, super, super important that you are informed and that you can tell your friends and neighbors, and the newsletter is a way to do that. Also, very soon, the Open Range record is coming. I know I've been saying that for months, but this time it's actually happening. So anyway, so thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Yesterday on the program, I gave you kind of a surprising soundbite from El Gordo in the Appropriations Committee. He got asked about his all-of-the-above energy approach. Here is what he said, my friends. Take a load of this.
You've spoken many times over the last couple of years about an all-in or all-of-the-above energy policy. And I would just ask that you describe for us where you think, what that looks like over the next 5 to 10 years.
All right, hold on. I think that Agent 29 misses us as much as we miss him. That's why he's been saying all this stuff in appropriations, because he knows that I'll grab a hold of a soundbite and I'll not be able to resist playing it for you. So that is my theory. I'm pretty sure that that's what's happening in appropriations. He's doing a great job exposing these folks. But here is what Redcoat Governor Mark Gordon replied.
I mean, the balance between the traditional energy that we've enjoyed for so long and what do you see on the horizon?
Given the governor's track record that I just laid out for you, answering a question like this ought to be no problem for him. One potential answer is exactly what he said at Harvard. But the governor has been catching a lot of flack from a couple of different directions. Secretary of State Chuck Gray has been very critical of the governor's decisions. And that's just one example. No doubt, one of the priorities going into the Appropriations Committee meeting would be for the governor to do no harm to his political agenda, because we're going into an election season and anybody that is tied to Gordon will also be tied to the governor's radical ideas about the climate. So mission number one is to not dig his hole any deeper. Now, I don't know if he accomplished that or not, but here's his answer to Representative Pendergraft. Get a load of this.
I think it's important that Wyoming be able to develop all of its resources. Now, I have talked about all of the above. That seems to be a national watchword at this point. I've kind of amended that to talk about best of all of the above so that we can look where it's appropriate for
the best of all of the above. So the very first thing that you should pay attention to there is he said it's become a national watchword. In other words, that phrase has become a political hot potato from him. That he mentioned it and he's getting beat about the head and shoulders with it. You said all of the above, which is what's been allowing you to put up all these windmills and, is tilting at windmills and all of that. And so he's tired of that. And so he's amended that to be the best of all of the above. But really all that tells you is that Governor Gordon is still going to make the decisions. Now, who decides what is the best of all of the above? Well, it's Mark Gordon. And what has Mark Gordon's track record been? Windmills, and lots of them, and windmills for dubious reasons. Lots of votes on the slip board. And I there are several people that have been voting with the governor. And it is a long and distinguished list about all these energy projects, because they seem to believe in this ridiculous idea that the SLIB board has to accept any sort of revenue that is proposed on state land. And Kurt Meyer and Christy Racines and Megan Degenfelder have been voting with the governor. The person who's been voting to have some sanity with a lot of these projects is Chuck Gray, and he's about the only one. And so don't let the governor fill you full of crap. He's still choosing the best of all of the above. But I think it's funny that he admits that it is a political hot potato. So a lot of these problems, a lot of the issues that we face can really be dealt with by some politicians that have a backbone, that they actually have a spine, and they will stand up for the things that they tell us. And that's the biggest problem, my friends, is that we have a number of people in politics that, they while standing on our doorstep, they certainly do. I mean, they appear to have a spine. Of course, they're not being challenged at all. And so they just tell us, hey, we're conservatives. We don't like abortion. We love our guns. We won't increase your taxes, so you just vote for us. And so we do, because we're kind of a trusting bunch. But really, a lot of the things that we face, whether economically or foreign policy-wise, they can easily be solved if you've got a politician with a backbone, with a spine. And that is exactly what Senator Kennedy had to say about it. When asked how we solve all of this, we don't need a bunch of Democrats. We need Republicans that'll get up off their lazy butt. Listen to him say it.
Party propelled President Trump to a second term, that coalition is falling apart over affordability.
I don't think the coalition is falling apart. I think that when the American people speak, you better listen to them. And I think that we need, the president and the United States Senate need to be working on things that moms and dads worry about when they lie down to sleep at night and can't. And one of the things is the cost of living. And what I'm telling you is there are things we can do that the president can't do, but in order to do it, the United States Senate has to get up off its ice cold, lazy butt. And you can't use the excuse, well, the Democrats won't go along with it. Of course they won't. But we don't need their votes. We can do it through reconciliation with a simple Republican
majority. I mean, that's all you need is Republicans that have a spine. So you just got to get them to, get up off their lazy behinds and do something about it. In the U.S. Senate, they've got the votes. They should do it through reconciliation. Now, at the state level, in the Wyoming House, this one's going to be fascinating because while conservatives control the majority in the Wyoming House, it's a budget session, and so things work a little bit differently. In a budget session, you have to have a 2/3 vote to introduce anything that is not, budget related. Now, that definition gets stretched a little bit depending on who's in power, but it is the redcoats and the Democrats who have more than 1/3 of the votes, so they can stop anything they want in the session, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That gridlock sometimes is good. Now, it's good when things are going, relatively well, when you don't really need to make any big decisions or make any big changes. A lot of times, the government that governs best governs not at all. They just don't do anything. That they don't pass any more bills. That just keep things the way that they are. And I think that's a lot of what you're going to see in the budget session is, there's going to be some conservative things that just don't make it to the floor because we don't have the votes to do it. And okay, so there's a lot of things that we need to fix, that's for sure. But sometimes gridlock is good. And so this upcoming session is going to require some persuading the other side to go along with you and step outside of their partisan boxes. And, that might be possible because the number of hardcore radical leftists in the Wyoming House is dwindling. Yeah, you've still got your Steve Harshmans and Double L Lloyd Larson, and Landon Brown is still there, and Bob Nicholas. Those folks are still there. So they're never going to change. But and you've got the Bobbsey twins down from the south part of the state. Oh gosh, how could I forget those? Larson, JT Larson, and Anthony, how could I forget all those people? Anyway, there's the Bobbsey twins down there from Rock Springs. They're never going to change their view, but there are some other people that you might be able to convince to go your way. And that's the only way that you're going to get things accomplished. You convince a couple of them, hey, vote with us. This is a good thing. It's really going to help it's really going to help your district. And, we won't use it against you in the election. And the truth is that there are politics involved in everything. And that's going to have to be the weapon of choice or one of the weapons of choice in the upcoming session is, hey, you're going to get beat over the head and shoulders about this. And it's another reason why. Here's a great example. One of the reasons why we run gun bills in the budget session is they're right next to an election. And so nobody wants to be seen as being anti-gun or voting against a good gun bill. And so the likelihood that it passes is actually pretty high. And so, nobody wants to be seen that way. And so they vote for it. And, that's how we got the Second Amendment Preservation Act. That's how we got that. I imagine that there will be an attempt to change that. I hope they don't, and I hope our Republicans in the House are the people that have the backbone. Now, the other factor in this is the Wyoming Senate. The Wyoming Senate is controlled by redcoats, and they have 7 of the 10 committees. They've got Slithers as the majority leader. She can pretty much decide what hits the floor and what doesn't. And you have Dennis Beitman and slimy Tim Salazar, and they're going to go along with whatever Slithers tells them anyway. And so you have to deal with them too. And, the biggest example here, the best example of how this could work, I think, is the Wyoming Business Council. And the trouble is that if the legislature with the budget, if the legislature doesn't make any decision, right, if they can't agree on any change, then you go with the governor's recommendation. And so, if they can't come to a resolution, well, then the Business Council gets $50 million instead of the $111 million that they wanted. And so, I mean, this upcoming session, it should be fascinating to watch, which is why I'm super, 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 super happy that I'll be able to bring it to you. And I'll be rolling out the schedule for Cowboy state politics during the session a little bit later. But anyway, it's going to be fascinating to watch, and we're going to bring you as much coverage as can possibly be brought to you. One of the plans with the Open Range Record is we're going to have a nightly news broadcast to the app and to social media of what happened during the day. We'll have guests and analysis, and we'll get some legislators on there. It's going to be a really good time. We'll get some lobbyists, and we might even get some Democrats to come on the show too. So we never know. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, and I can't wait to bring it all to you. Now, one of the young gals that I haven't talked about for a while is Sydney Sweeney. Love her. Love that ad. Well, now, I mean, there has been a lot of, criticism of her jeans ad. And it's because, most of the liberals, they're not as hot as Sydney Sweeney. And that's why they're so mad. Let me just give you an example. So here's one ad from Sydney Sweeney, in case you've forgotten. And okay, so it's a gratuitous moment of showing you a video of a hot blonde girl. So, I mean, come on. Don't criticize.
I'm not here to tell you to buy American Eagle jeans. And I definitely won't say that they're the most comfortable jeans I've ever worn. Or that they make your butt look amazing. Why would I need to do that? But if you said that you want to buy the jeans, I'm not going to stop you. But just so we're clear, this is not me telling you to buy American Eagle jeans.
Sydney Sweeney has great jeans.
You see what I did there, right?
Yes, she does have great jeans. And while we're at it, we may as well play another one, just so we get the full experience of Sydney Sweeney and how terrible all those ads are, at least according to the Democrats, because they're not as hot as Sydney Sweeney. Here's another one.
Genes are passed down from parents to offspring, often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My jeans are blue.
Sydney Sweeney has great jeans.
Sydney Sweeney does have great jeans. Well, she has finally come out and made a statement about all the criticism that she's been receiving. And this is from the Post-Millennial. Sydney Sweeney now expresses regret for her silence over the jeans ad, says she's against hate while promoting her new feminist movie. And I quote, Sydney Sweeney has addressed the controversy surrounding her American Eagle jeans advertisement that it was released earlier this year, where many on the left said the ad was advancing something similar to a far-right agenda, that she has great jeans. Whatever, liberals are stupid. Sweeney, who has not commented much on the ad, has said that she's against hate and that her silence has widened the divide in America. I disagree. I think it has exposed how vapid and insipid the American left is. In an interview with People magazine, Sweeney said that she wants to, quote, lead with kindness, and that she wanted to address the backlash against her advertisement, which many just viewed as a play on words, jeans. And this comes as she has also been promoting her release of The Housemaid, a feminist movie in which she plays the lead role. Quote, anyone who knows me knows that I'm always trying to bring people together. I'm against hate and divisiveness. In the past, my stance has been to never respond to negative or positive press, but recently I've come to realize that my silence regarding this issue has only widened the divide, not closed it. So I hope this new year brings more focus on what connects us instead of what divides us. As for the ad, she says, I did it because I love jeans and I love the brand. I don't support the views of some people chose to connect to the campaign. Many have assigned motives and labels to me that just aren't true. Now, she first addressed the ad campaign during an interview with GQ. You remember the one. I should have grabbed a video of that, where she looks at the interview with just this dumbfounded look like, how could you be so stupid to ask me that question? let's see here, where she refused to answer the backlash and dismissed it. Quote, "I think when I have an issue that I want to speak about, people will hear it," Sidney said at the time. But the ad, I think, exposed something a little bit different in our culture, that the left was trying as much as they could to inject politics into everything. And to some degree, they were successful at a lot of that. But they went a little bit far with the jeans ad. Now, why did American Eagle choose Sydney Sweeney? Because she's young and she's hot and she looks great in those jeans. And they thought that she could help them sell more jeans, which is exactly what happened. And it infuriated the left because their backlash to it didn't decrease the sales of jeans. It sent them through the roof, which is probably what executives at American Eagle were thinking. But it exposed how ridiculously vapid we have become, that politics is injected into everything and that there is a political motive attached to everything. As Freud said, that sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, and that's what it is. That's what it is. No matter how much you try to inject politics in it, sometimes it's just not there. Now, I will admit that in Wyoming, everything is politics, except for politics. That's personal. But that's the nature of our state, that there are a lot of things in our world that absolutely are political. But we should recognize those for what those are. Yep, this is a political item, and that one is a hot girl in a jeans ad. That's all that it is. When you try to ascribe political philosophy to things that aren't in any way political and that just happen to be a play on words, you end up exposing yourself as the ridiculously small political actor that you are, that you're trying to stretch everything to win a political point. The truth is, if you really wanted to win, and perhaps you could accuse me of giving advice to the liberals, focus on the things that are political and dismiss the other things that aren't. Say, call a jackass a jackass. That's all you got to do. And when it does vote like a donkey, call it such, instead of trying to stretch everything to fit your own political narrative. And I mean, that's just where we are as a culture. And one of those places that we've tried to do that is in education, or that the left has been trying to do that everything has a political narrative to it, because you've got a lot of young sponges there that absorb everything that is thrown at them. Well, there's a piece in The Blaze, and it's entitled, "Inside the Radical Pipeline, Turning America's Teachers into Activists." Quoting now, "Following the unrest that unfolded at a Turning Point USA event at the University of California at Berkeley, the Department of Justice has launched an investigation into those behind the disruption. One of the alleged organizers of the recent protest, by any means necessary, has been described as part of the ecosystem of the anti-fascist movement. These educators," and it was an educator who organized this thing. It wasn't a student. I don't know how much difference that makes, but it was an educator. So these educators are attempting to advance their political agenda through statewide governmental jobs and teachers' union leadership positions. Unfortunately, UC Berkeley is no stranger to left-wing protests. That's been their history. In 2017, several far-left agitators were arrested at a conservative rally on the same campus. One of those individuals was a BAM member, B-A-M-N, and middle school teacher Yvette Fellarca, who had previously defended the use of militant violence in an interview. She also had been charged in 2016 with a similar offense. But Fellarca is not an anomaly. Rather, she's one example of a fringe of aggressive far-left revolutionaries who seek to corrupt the K-12 education ecosystem to advance their radical political ideology, whether through ethnic studies curriculums or organizing teach-ins for Gaza or anti-Israeli activism or alleged glorification of terrorism and endorsement of Antifa. Activist teachers are leveraging the historical trust bestowed upon the education profession to foment an anti-Western, anti-American mindset in schools and in culture. And I mean, if you look at the teaching profession as a whole, we're not talking about a job category that is dominated by conservatives. It's mostly liberals. And where does Wyoming get most of our teachers? The University of Wyoming, or a lot of them anyway, or Nebraska. And I mean, the University of Wyoming historically has ranked near the top of some of the more liberal institutions in this country. And so none of us should be surprised that a liberal teacher, when we find a liberal teacher, that they went to a liberal institution and they're pushing their liberal agenda down your kids' throats. That shouldn't shock us at all. But rather, what we need to do is, one, get a handle on our liberal institutions, just like we have been trying to do with the University of Wyoming. That you're going to stop teaching your DEI program and get back to focusing on what the university was set up for in the beginning, to be a land-grant university, which is what it is. I mean, that's how it started, but it has morphed into something that is entirely different. And we've got to get a handle on it. Now, the way that you do that is we have good conservative people get in the teaching profession. And that's the only way that we're going to stop it. Yeah, we can pass a bunch of laws and we can prevent you from, shoving DEI down the throats of kids. And we can prevent all of the letting boys in the girls' bathroom and on the girls' sports teams and all of that. But really, the solution is to get conservative-minded folks into the teaching profession, or pull your kids out of school and teach them at home. Later on today, I've got my debate class with a bunch of free-thinking, conservative homeschool students. It's one of the highlights of my week. And so, as it relates to that, I should probably get to work on it. And we burned through another busy broadcast hour, 2 hours on the program. We'll see you tomorrow on the program. Make sure that you don't miss, you want to go back and listen to all of the podcast episodes. Tomorrow's episode is going to be Harriet Hageman. It's a fascinating conversation, so don't miss it. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, from the Cowboy State Politics studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.